Okay, after this few delays, we're gonna start today. We have plenty of things to talk about and to discuss today. We are here to talk about not only the 5 years of the data against feminicide, the report that Isadora and Alessandra has prepared, and the presentation that has prepared for us today, but also the launch of AI tools in Swahili. So we have a really packed schedule today. Some logistics advice that is very important because we have different interpreters with us today. First of all, thank you to all of them. Many of them are here and been here with us since the first day, so we are really thankful to all of them. The good news is we also have Swahili interpretation today. So depending on which type of language you want you prefer to listen to, you go to the interpretation icon and you have the options for Spanish, Portuguese, and you have the label that says Korean, but it's Swahili. So we didn't have the right label there, but if you go there, you have Fiona doing the Swahili interpretation for us today. So also, I advise that if you are in the Spanish, Portuguese, or Swahili channel, to mute the original sound because in that sense, it's going to be a little bit more clear to you. If you want to listen to the English, just stay in the main channels. You don't need to go to any of the other channels. So please do that depending on which language you prefer. And once again, thank you to all the interpreters that are here with us. Another advice or tip that we have today is to share with us the ways that you can connect not only with us, but with all the people that are involved in the Data Against Feminicide initiative. We have several options. First of all, the directory. So please check, add your information if you want to be there, and also check if you need somebody from our network. Probably it's an event, probably some consultancy work, probably some collaboration. Check because there's tons of professionals there doing different jobs around the world. So you're going to find a lot of important people there that could make your project even better or your event, depending on the case. We have the Slack channel as well. So there, in general, we have some general communications, but also you have the opportunity there to chat with other people there in the network. And last but not least, we have the website. Is the same URL, but also there's a new and improved content there. So we managed to put more information there, renew land page with the support of Hilda. So thank you to them very much. So those are some of the channels that you have to connect with us, not only today, but after the event as well. So today, just to be on the same page, we are going to talk about, as I mentioned before, the 5 years of Data Against Feminicide. That is an initiative that we started back in 2019 with an informal conversation with Catherine and Helena that are here today with us, and that Isadora joined as the leadership member in 2023. There has been many things happening between 2019 to 2025 that we are here today. And for that, we are going to hear from Isadora Cruxên from the Queen Mary University, but it's also part of the Data Against Feminicide initiative, and also Alessandra Jungs. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the Almeida. Alessandra also contributed from the beginning to the AI tools design. She is and was part of the MIT Data Feminism Lab. That's also part and collaborator and partner of this Data Against Feminicide project and initiative. So In that sense, they both been working with a lot of input from different members on the report. And I'm going to stop here because I don't want to keep talking. I think I managed to pass all the logistic information that were important. We are going to hear now from Isadora and Alessandra about the report and the 5 years of data against feminicide. And after that, Catherine is going to introduce us to the Swahili version of the tools. In between, we're going to have a small time or short time for questions. So I'm going to stop here. Isadora, Alessandra, the floor is yours. We're going to listen to you in the next few minutes. Thank you again for everybody that are here today in the different channels. Isa and Alessandra, all yours.
Thank you so much, Silvana, and thank you everyone for being here. It's really a joy for us to be in this space and be able to share some of the work that we've done over the last 5 years with you all. So essentially, I wanted to start by providing a little bit of our motivation for producing this report. As you can see here, it's available in English, in Spanish, and Portuguese. You can access it through the link that is in the slide, but also the links are going to be put in the channel by my colleagues. And through the link, you'll be able to download the version that you're interested in potentially reading. So our goal in producing this report was to make the research that we've done over the last 5 years more accessible to the broader community of activists, scholars, journalists, policymakers, and so on that we've built through this project over this past 5 years. We won't go in detail into everything that is in the report. Like, we hope you can do that in your own time as you're able to engage with the document. But we wanted to provide you with an overview of what you can find in the report in terms of content. So I'll jump right into that. Silvana, if you can, yeah, thank you. So the report is organized around the main objectives of the project. As Silvana said, this is a South-North participatory action research and design project in which we try to support the work of activists and civil society organizations that produce data on gender-related violence and specifically on feminicide. So the project was founded in 2019, as Silvana said, and over the past 5 years, we've produced a lot of publications, research, we've done a lot of events, we've built a really fantastic community of practice around the production of data against feminicide. And this, everything that we've done has been organized around these 3 objectives that are here on the slide. So the first is to understand the practices, strategies, and challenges that are involved in the production of data against feminicide across different contexts. The second is to co-design and develop technological tools that can support this data production. So do that through a participatory and feminist approach. And third, to foster an international community of practice, which I mentioned earlier, around the production of data about feminicide. So I'll start by talking a bit about what we've done to be able to understand the practices and strategies of different activists who are monitoring feminicide violence. So next slide, please, Silvana. So to kind of start the project, one of the things that we did was to identify and do qualitative interviews with projects across a variety of countries, primarily in South and North America at first, that were engaging in data production against feminicide. So we've over time interviewed more than 40 civil society groups and organizations encompassing more than 70 individuals that are engaged in this kind of work. Because our primary focus emerged around Latin America due to the areas of research that and professional practice that we've been involved in over the years, we decided to also do a global survey of activism against feminicide to try to understand, practices and strategies in a more kind of global context. And we'll talk about that global survey in a second. And then the final thing that we've done over the last 5 years is to co-design workshops, and participatory development processes that could help with the development of digital tools that support feminicide monitoring. And we'll also talk about that in a second. So one of the things, like we learned a lot over the last 5 years about the kinds, you can move on, Silvana, thank you. We've learned a lot over the last 5 years about what activists do practically to monitor feminicide violence across different contexts, right? And we've tried to organize those practices and strategies around 3 kind of workflow steps, one could say. So one is researching cases. So how do activists find information, verify information, follow up on cases, as a way to kind of do that monitoring process. The second step would be the recording of data. So what are the strategies and software or different types of technology that are used to extract information from sources, to record them in data sets? Oh, I'm sorry, I can see that the Swahili audio is not coming through. Would you like me to wait just a second, or should I carry on? What do you think, team?
Go ahead. We'll try to fix it here in the background.
Okay. So the second step would be recording. So the extracting of information from sources, recording them in data sets, also like understanding how activists categorize cases of feminicide into different typologies. We've learned that different groups have different forms of categorization that they've developed. And we discussed this in the report and in the associated research that we've produced over time. And then the final piece is what we call refusing broadly, but it has to do with how activists and civil society groups use this data for a variety of purposes to confront feminicide violence. So that includes remembering lives lost, framing counter narratives around feminicide data, supporting collective action, and so on. We provide some examples and quotes from the interviews that help to illustrate all of these practices in the report. The second thing that we wanted to highlight from the research that we've done is that we've learned a lot about the role of space in shaping the availability of information and data production practices on feminicide. So essentially, we started noticing, this wasn't something that we at first had set out as a research question, but we started noticing through the interviews that spatial categories consistently emerged in our conversations. So it was clear to us that data production is spatially uneven, right? And particularly feminicides that happen in peripheral or vulnerable urban areas tended to be last reported, especially when these cases involved women from marginalized groups in terms of race, class, gender identity. So we talk a lot about this in the report in terms of this idea of geographies of missing data. And we've also tried to map what kinds of spatial strategies activists use to counter these geographies of missing data. So that includes, for example, using very specialized or hyper-local forms of media like local blogs or radio stations, but also decentralizing organizational infrastructure so that you can reach more into the territory and access spaces that you might not be able to access if you're based in a city center, or you're kind of far away from smaller municipalities and so on. And then finally, we also discussed the emotional labor that is involved in producing and caring for the data that is produced. And we explore practices of both self-care and collective care that you can find in the report. So with that, Silvana, can you pass the next? Thanks. So with that, we also try to report back on this global survey that we did between November 2023 and March 2024, where we were trying to understand, to extend the reach of our own understanding of data production against feminicide. So I'm going to pass it over to Alessandra, who will talk more about the survey and about the other objectives of the project.
So hi everyone, I will share a little bit. My name is Alessandra. I share a little bit about the results of the survey you did with groups working with data production about feminicide in different parts of the world. So from this survey, we know 38 groups answered it from different parts of the world, and the oldest project that answered it has 28 years of age, meaning it's 28 years collecting data about feminicide. And the project more younger, the youngest project was created in 2023. Some of the challenge these groups that answered the survey had in common in collecting data, in finding information about feminicide, are the following. They observed that the media coverage is very racist, misogynist, transphobic. They also observed that there is an underreported in the news of killings in relation to people who are from specific, more vulnerable social groups, related to their race, related to their work, like sex workers, if they are trans women, if they're from indigenous nations or they're indigenous people. Also, they observed the official data on feminicide sometimes is not published at all by the state, we mean here, or when it's published, it's difficult to access, or if it's collected, it's not accessible at all. So these are some of the challenges these groups have. And also when these killings are collected by government, sometimes they are misclassified, meaning they are not categorized. Even when the law says and explains what is a feminicide, they are categorized, let's say as a homicide, for example. And also we observed through the survey that there is less coverage or less news in relation to areas that are more remote, more far away from capitals, for example, or rural areas. From the groups that answer this survey, half of them, they are in contact and they work with state institutions. But for 42% of them, they don't have this relationship with the state, and sometimes they are even targeted by the state itself. So if you could go for the next slide. We are going to talk a little bit, if you could click again, I think it will appear, about the second goal of the project, which is to co-design and develop technological tools to support data production and communication about feminicide, as Isa already said. So one important thing to say here is that we don't collect and produce data about feminicide. Data Against Feminicide project doesn't do this. We support organizations that are actually doing it. So if you could go to the next slide, Silvana, thank you. So in this sense, in this part of the project, we have been doing a lot in the last few years. Today, for example, our colleagues from the Swahili part of the project will introduce to you the email alerts in the Swahili version. But to have these email alerts platform in other three languages, Portuguese, English, and Spanish. And in these different languages, it was a different process to develop this. But first, of course, what is the email alerts platform? The email alerts platform is basically because, as we said here before, data activists that collect data about feminicide, usually they are collecting this data. They collect in different places, but usually the more common way is through newspapers that are online. So they read a lot of information about feminicide in the media that is online, and they need to grab and find these links, of course, right? So what the platform does, it has to, I won't talk a lot about this because I know that you talk about this later, but each person can create a project, each initiative or group can create a project there in a specific region, a specific location of the world with these three languages, of course, finding information about these three, and now Swahili 2-4 languages. And then the platform will send to you through a model, this is the second filter, the news related to these keywords. And then nowadays you have in the platform more than 150 users. There are at least 65 distinct projects in the platform, meaning they have different regions, maybe different goals. They are maybe collecting data just about trans killings or just about in a region of Brazil, I don't know, or Argentina, let's say. And also there are 14 countries with projects in the platform, and Brazil has the largest number of projects. It has 19 active projects nowadays. You can find all the information about the platform in the Data Against Feminicide website, about the platform, but also about the data highlighter, which is another tool we developed. And we are developing other tools that I think will be talked about later too. And then the next slide. In the third goal of the Data Against Feminicide project, our goal is to foster an international community of practice around the production of data about feminicide. And in this sense, of course, everything I'm saying, so good. We have a report talking everything with more details. So you can open this report and read more carefully if you have time. But then in building a community here, we give as an example all the meetings we have in the last few years in November, which is the month of the fight against violence against women around the world. So we meet every year, usually in this month, to fight against feminicide, to name it, right? And today we're meeting in 2025 here together to build this community of practice that's basically a group of people that share interests, right? And that are producing, in this case, data against feminicide, or intend in some way also to produce data against feminicide. And you can find all the last videos from the previous meetings in this QR code here, but also you can find it through our report if you can read it. And finally, you have some messages from when we're conducting the project with our Brazilian collaborators. If you could pass for the next slide, Silvana. They led some message for other Brazilians, but also for other people from around the world who are collecting and producing data about feminicide. And these messages also, you can read them in the end of the report. One of them, for example, which says, data collection is a tough task, but a very necessary one. We need to continue this struggle so that we'll have reliable data and information to bring memory and justice to all women. So I will let it here, and I think now is the moment for questions, very quickly, right? Like 5 minutes of questions, and then we're going to move to the next phase of the presentation.
I don't know, Isa, if you want to be in charge of answering or collecting the question. We have one in the Q&A, and also the person that is raising her hand, if it's possible to type it in the chat. Yeah, maybe it's easier if it's in the chat for you and Alessandra to reply to them.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Silvana. So Patricia, I've allowed you to speak. If you want to just raise your question, I think that'll be great.
Hi. My name is Patricia. I have 2 questions, and I know you don't collect data straightly, but I was wondering, for example, feminicide attempts, because this is a very key issue as well. I mean, to save people who are in danger. I mean, they almost died already, but I'm laughing for nervous. I'm sorry. For example, I have a case. A friend of mine, close friend of mine, she almost died, and she was caught. She was saved at the moment, and the justice just filed the case as a death threat, as a threat, not as a feminicide attempt. So, and these cases don't ever go to press, actually. So how can we know that? Is there like a even to correct justice or to help judges also through journalism to verify or to pay more attention to these cases? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. And the other question is, like you said, there's an organization collecting data for 28 years already. And is there any resource, I don't know, or an attempt to find a way to get this at least numbers from the past or memory cases? I don't know. Do you know of any initiative on that? I'm just thinking, because I'm trying to track some specific case in the past before 5 years ago. So I it would be great if you could help. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Those are wonderful questions. So the first one on attempted feminicide, there are definitely several groups that also track feminicide attempts. One of them, for example, is NEA's Observatório de Londrinas. I'll put their chat. They're from Brazil, but they track attempted feminicides, and they also track femicides, and they track how these cases evolve in the judicial system, for example. One of the people who is associated with NEA is Silvana. She's also the lead of a lab, a research lab in Brazil called LESFEM, Laboratório de Estudos de Feminicídio. And LESFEM produces data both on feminicides and attempted feminicides, and they do that monitoring for the whole country. So those are just a couple of examples, but there are several other groups across Latin America, North America, and other contexts that we've engaged with that also track those numbers. But you're absolutely right that they are harder to monitor because they're often not reported. And that is one of the reasons that I mentioned the example of NEA's, because they've also been doing quite a lot of work in terms of trying to shape media coverage such that they will, start covering cases of not just feminicide, but attempted feminicide, and doing a better job with that coverage. Alessandra, do you want to take the other question so that I don't go on forever? Yeah.
So from numbers of the past, I know, I think I will ask Catherine to jump here because I think we were working on this, but some years ago, right? And I don't know in the end if you develop it. I think before 2014, you could go behind it, right, Catherine?
The question is how far back in time we could look?
So Patricia was wondering about data from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, for example, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. For example, I have a very awful one in the UK. It was in 2008, and the guy is going to be released now, and I'm trying to track what happened to the guy, and if he's going to be released or if he was released already. And it was in the UK in 2008, and I have no idea. I have approached many organizations tracking data, and I have no idea how to find this information.
Yeah, well, so our own data is limited by the time period of our databases, and we are partnered mainly with a database called Media Cloud, which is a very large database of news articles. And I just want to recognize our partner, Rahul Bhargav, who's also from Media Cloud. He's here today, and he could answer questions in the chat about Media Cloud. But in this case, since you're looking for a very specific case from that time period, I am not sure. I don't believe Media Cloud goes back that far. But if it does, Rahul can tell us maybe in the chat. But if it does go back to 2008, that would be something you could go directly to Media Cloud. And it's an open source tool, freely accessible. And you can search for the person's name. And that would surface, and you can limit it to the UK. So that would surface articles about that particular case. And actually, I think that would be at least a first step towards finding some of that information from a long time ago. And I'll put the link in the chat as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you as well for the other questions that have been asked in the Q&A chat. So for the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next stage of our webinar today, where we're going to talk about the Swahili launch, and that will also provide more insight into the tools. But if you have additional questions on the report, our work, the research that we've done, please put them in the Q&A chat and we'll continue to respond to you. Thank you so much. Over to
Catherine,
you.
I don't know if you want to follow these parts of the conversation.
Sure. So welcome everybody. It's very exciting for us to have an event where we can do two celebrations at one time. So the first celebration is 5 years of this project that we've worked on together across many geographies and many groups and many people. And then the second part is the launch of a significant new expansion of our tools. And so the tools that Alessandra and Isa were describing, they have been available in English, Spanish, Portuguese. But today we're really proud to launch those same tools in Swahili. And so now, as of today, they are now available to any groups around the world that monitor femicide or feminicide in Swahili. So looking at Swahili news media in particular to find cases. And I'm really honored to be able to introduce our partner for this work, and also maybe describe a little bit of how we work. So when we work on a new adaptation of the tools into a new language and a new geography and a new context, we try to do that in a very collaborative and participatory way, because we ourselves are not typically the expert in those areas. And in the case of Swahili, don't even speak any, like basically none of us on the team speak Swahili. And so we try to work in a very grounded way with a partner who can help us both translate the tools, but also annotate data to train our AI models to work in those languages and to work in those contexts. And so today I wanted to introduce our partner organization that we've been working with now for almost a year, actually. The group is called Femicide Count Kenya, and our sort of main contact and partner there is Audrey Mugeni, who is the lead of Femicide Count Kenya. And we have known Audrey for a very long time because, in fact, when we started this project 5 years ago, we did a lot of research trying to understand, who are the groups, who are the activists and nonprofits and advocacy organizations who are counting feminicide, who are trying to log cases. And there were many groups in Latin America, some groups in North America, a handful of groups in Europe, and then fewer groups in Africa and Asia, at least for what we found at that particular time. But we were really excited to see the work of Femicide Count Kenya. We came across their work early in our research, and we interviewed Audrey. Now it's like 4 or 5 years ago that we talked with her. And she has a really unique path, a unique perspective on the phenomenon of feminicide, or femicide, as they call it, and has been a fierce advocate for women and girls in Kenya for a number of years now. And it's been really also gratifying since we talked with Audrey to see the rise of Femicide Count Kenya as an organization that is getting more and more recognition and support for their work, and then to be able to partner with them to bring our tools to a Swahili and African context. So I'm going to turn it over to Audrey now, and she can tell you more about herself, but also her work leading Femicide Count Kenya and why they do what they do.
Thank you so much, Catherine. My name is Audrey Mugeni. That was a very gracious introduction, Catherine. Thank you. And yes, I have known Catherine for over the past 5 years. I'm going to start by introducing myself by just saying that my name is Audrey Mugeni. I like introducing myself as a human rights activist, but then I focus a lot on rights for women and girls. So this is work that I've been doing for close to 15 years now. And I've been doing this work in Kenya and also around other East African countries and part of Southern African countries. Apart from just the work that I've been doing, the other thing that I've been doing is that I've been counting femicides. And I've been counting femicides not as long as I've been doing violence against women work. So I've been counting femicides for close to 7 years now. So maybe half the time of which that I've been doing this work. And as I get into that, I just want to start by talking about a few things that will get me into why I started counting femicides. I want to talk about 2 or 3 truths. And the very first one is that when a femicide occurs, it's not just a statistic. It's women and girls that we know. And these women and girls could be sisters, they could be our daughters, they could be our friends, they could be our mothers, and they could even be, the woman that you know across the street or you meet when you're going home or you're going to work, or maybe even a neighbor. And the second truth is that when femicides are happening, all across the world. Yet in Africa, they're also happening in Africa, but then yet in our African countries, we usually do not have official data. We don't have official data, and these are things that we are trying to build currently. And the very third truth is that without data, femicides remain invisible. That's one of the things that I've realized. And they remain invisible. And when they're invisible, it's easier for our leaders, it's easier for systems, and easier for the public to just say, you know what, let's look away. These are just things that keep happening. Because one of the things that I also realized on working against violence against women is that violence against women is a very silent thing. And because it's a silent thing, then it's easy to be forgotten. And so as I get into the origin story of Femicide Count, I want to say that in 2018, we were shaken by two murders in the country. One of a university student, and this was Sharon Otieno, and the second one was that of Monica Kimani. So Monica was not a university student, but Monica was an entrepreneur. These two particular femicides shook the country, and there was a lot of conversation that went on. But the conversation, when we thought that the conversation would go on the side of what do we do or how can we stop the violence that's happening toward women, it took a completely different turn. Everybody was questioning why were they not careful? How did they not know? They must have been looking for death. That is where the conversation centered. So I, together with a very close friend of mine, Dr. Kathomi Gatweri, who we started Femicide Count Kenya with, and three of our friends, one evening, just as we were having conversations, we talked about Monica and we talked about Sharon. But then we also talked about the cycles of violence that we had seen in our own generation, in the generations that came before us, and even what we are currently facing in our own families and in our own homes. And we were reminded that we were reminded of the violence that we've had to live through and that we witnessed. So because of these conversations that we were having, we asked ourselves, what can we do? Because a femicide is eventually going to violence is eventually going to end into a femicide. And that is where Kathomi and I decided, why don't we start a database that is going to document every case that we can find and give these women's lives and deaths a record to make femicide impossible to ignore. So in January of 2019, we started with a database that we put up on Facebook, and we simply just called it Counting Dead Women Kenya. So we began it as something that we wanted to express our grief of the women and the girls who are dying in the country. And this eventually evolved into now what we are calling Femicide Count Kenya. We have seen a lot of change in the country and a lot of change in the system, which I'm going to get into from the presentation that now that I'm getting into currently. What is on the page right now are some of the faces of the women that we've been counting along the years. Yes, let's move to the next slide, please. So the methods that we use to count our data sources have been the media primarily. So we identify the cases using the AI and ML tools that have been developed with support from MIT. And here we scan and then we classify the articles as femicide cases, and then we give details of each case, and then we record this. So what qualifies as a femicide, we've used this based on the UN Women criteria, and this involves repeated violence, sexual assault, excessive torture, e.g., when we are doing this presentation, it was when a lot of conversation was going around about Deka Abdinu when she was boiled, and her body had been dumped in Langata Cemetery. This is a cemetery here in Kenya. And then it also looks at victims dumped in public spaces, e.g., at that particular time we had women, very many women dumped in an estate in Kenya called Isili. And then we connect this to sex work, to slavery or human trafficking, perpetrators expressing hatred towards women, and then killings linked to harmful cultural practices such as honor killings, and then female genital mutilations, which we experience a lot in this country. Next slide, please. So these are the numbers. So we started counting in 2019. In 2019, we had 111. In 2020, we had 50. In 2021, 71. In 2022, 105. In 2023, 161. And in 2024, 208. In 2025, we had a police tally that happened in March of 2025, and they gave 190 femicides that happened this particular year. And then for the count that we've done between January and April, as femicide count, we have 53 numbers. So as you can see, the numbers are very high. Giving a total of all of these numbers, we have more than 800 women and girls who've been killed with regards to femicides. So this basically just shows who the perpetrator is. So it's usually a family member, an intimate partner, somebody just other, or an unknown person. So most femicides are by intimate partners, usually both current and past partners. And then family members such as fathers or sons are also very big perpetrators here. And then for very many of these cases, the media does not report who committed the femicide. So a femicide will happen and it will be classified as a femicide, but then we do not know who actually committed the femicide. And then these are just the motives that are given. So if you are able to read on the motives, there are very many given there. So there's marital arguments, there's an affair, there's a dispute, maybe a land dispute, there's fight, there's witchcraft. There are so many things. But then the main motive that we see that happens is usually domestic violence. So in the context of relationships, many women are also murdered when they try to leave an abusive relationship. So at the moment in which a woman says, you know, I've left, or they've left, then it's at that point that they are murdered. So they are also murdered when her partner suspect that, you know, you're cheating, or they feel like, you know, you're cheating. And then in our context, in the Kenyan context, a lot of land disputes also play a major role. Many of our cultures do not allow women to own land. So when it is suspected that a woman is going to be owning land, then they are going to be unalived. There's also a lot of conversations around witchcraft that also happens in our context. Next slide, please. So the numbers that we are not seeing, as femicide count, these are the numbers that we are not seeing. So we do not have complete data for women with disabilities because we have no national reporting on femicides affecting them. And even as a count, we've not been able to gather this. We do not have a complete data on refugee and migrant women, or even cases of unreported or misclassified women. We do not have complete data of rural communities. Many cases, especially in rural areas, never make it to police records or even make it to the media. We do not have complete data on LGBTQI+ women because their violence often goes unrecognized as a femicide. It's not going to be categorized as a femicide. It will just go unrecognized. And then we have very little reporting for children and adolescents because this is an underreported femicide statistics. One of the things that we keep talking about at Femicide Count is that the number of children who are dying is becoming as high as the women who are dying. But then when they are not reported or when they just go missing, then there's a lot of statistic that goes missing. We do not have numbers for harmful cultural practices. For instance, widow inheritance, there are ritual killings, and then there's female genital mutilation. We do not have numbers for religious extremism. If you follow the news for Kenya, 2 years ago, there was a lot of conversation on a religious extremist in a place called Shakahola, a place in coastal Kenya. And so many women and girls and children died because of this particular incident. But then this was never reported. These were never reported as femicides. And then also child marriage is disguised as tradition. So why we have these gaps is because we lack official government tracking, which we are trying to see that this can be enforced with the data that we are currently holding. We have language barriers in reporting. That is why we have said, why don't we also create, tools in Swahili? And then there's a lot of stigma and fear of retaliation. When we speak about the violence of women, then there's a lot of, stigma, how that is held in the society. There's underreporting in local media, and there's no dedicated systems for intersectional data. When we put these numbers out, one of the things that happens is that it removes the excuse that we don't know. how bad it is. When we are putting the numbers out, we're actually showing how bad it is, because it's pretty bad in Kenya. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. So why are we building the Swahili tools? Today we are launching Swahili data tools because English shouldn't be a barrier to justice. So in Kenya and across East Africa, we have many survivors, families, and local activists and community leaders who do not operate in English. So by creating tools in Swahili, we are breaking down of the barriers that has been a barrier towards justice, so that more people can be able to report, to record, and even to respond to femicide cases in real time. So in this way, one of the things that we are hoping to happen is that we'll be able to democratize data, thus making sure it is not locked away in academic reports, but that the data that we are putting out here is alive and it's accessible, especially to the most affected people. So they will not be affected anymore, but then we'll be able to work towards not having femicides. So I have a call to action. I haven't checked, I have not checked who is here, but I am anticipating that there are as many African activists in the room as there is me. But then I want to say that in the past, I have a call to action to African activists. So in the past 2 years, that is in 2024 and in 2025, counting femicides in Kenya has taken on a life of its own. It's become a giant now. So what we began as, just counting dead women on Facebook has grown into a national conversation. So our data is now being cited in parliament, it's being used by journalists, and it's also even being demanded in communities who want to know the truth. So it has become, we are not just counting, we are now demanding accountability. And the one thing that is happening is that we are also honoring the murdered. So to my fellow activists across Africa, because we are not counting, I want to say this: if we don't document, others will write our stories for us. And as history has taught us, the parts that matter the most will be erased. And that is going to be us. We are going to be erased as women. So what we need now is a continental wave of femicide documentation. We need tools in our own languages, shaped in our own realities, and we need to stop relying on Western reports to tell our tragedies. We need to be able to tell these tragedies ourselves, because we need to be able to make our governments work for us. And we, as the women of this continent, we also need to be able to work together. So the call is for us to take our Swahili tools, adapt them in your own country, translate them into your own languages, and start your own counts. That is the count that I am calling for African activists. The vision that I am seeing from all of this is that you're going to have an Africa where femicide is no longer invisible and where every murder is met with action. We are going to see an Africa where every woman lives free from fear and where our daughters grow up in a world that values their lives. So that vision literally just starts with us. So we believe at Femicide Count, we believe that counting and analyzing this data, conducting research, and even creating policies and programs that reflect the research and the data is the first step to ending violence against women, ultimately ending femicides. Yeah. And I am going to stop from there. If I spoke very fast, apologies. I am a very fast speaker. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Audrey. That was fantastic. So we're just going to go over the objectives of the collaborative project between Femicide Count Kenya and Data Against Femicide. And these are two. Firstly, to enable Femicide Count Kenya to improve their workflow and support the collection of femicide cases covered by Swahili news outlets. Secondly, this collaboration allows us to pave the way for partnerships with organizations in other Swahili-speaking countries, such as Tanzania, Rwanda, and eventually open up the path for collaborations within other countries within the African continent. Next slide, please. So the big question is, how do the tools that came about as a result of this collaboration fit into the workflow of recording femicides? Yes, so we created two tools or we adapted our workflow to fit into these two tools. And the first is email alerts. Email alerts works such that activists are able to receive relevant daily email alerts. So these come to your email account from curated sources. A few of the select features in this platform, as you can see to the left of the slide, are you have the ability to customize your search query so that you can get much more relevant articles, depending on your workflow, depending on what kind of cases you're looking for. You're also able to adjust the date range for viewing stories. So you're able to go back as far as a year, a month, a day. And this is really relevant when you're looking up cases within a specific time period. And depending on the size of your team, you're also able to add team members within your organization to this tool so that they can access the cases as well within their email accounts. This tool was developed with the aid of machine learning, and especially we developed a model that uses the TF-IDF vectorizer and a logistic regression classifier, but this essentially supports the pulling in of Swahili articles and the classification of these articles. Next slide, please. Secondly, we have the data highlighter. Now, say you've clicked on an article that piques your interest. The data highlighter allows you to automatically detect and highlight people, places, dates of interest within your workflow, as you can see on the right. Select features within this tool are the ability to create custom keywords. Say, for example, the automatic entries do not work for you. You have the ability to add something custom and also to assign custom highlight colors. Perhaps you would like something that works for your organization, a different theme. You are able to customize this. And you are also able to link spreadsheets for data entry, such that it's much easier to just, when you found an article that you're working with, you just add this to your spreadsheet and continue with your work. And this also is a machine learning enabled tool that uses named entity recognition. So that's how these words are highlighted, such as Sylvia Kemunto's to the right. And the model we used here was actually developed by a team of African researchers from the Masaka NER lab. So we're just going to have a brief demo. Yes, and let me just share my screen. All right. So let me know if you can see what's happening.
That looks good.
Okay, fantastic. Oh. Okay, just a moment. Yes. So assuming that you have followed all the instructions and you have accessed the email alerts platform, you will be faced with this homepage, and say you've already created an account. I'm just going to skip over that and go to the process of signing in. So you'll be able to enter credentials. That's a bit strict. Okay, fantastic. Yes, so this is what the homepage typically looks like. And I'm just going to go from left to right, showing the different features that this platform offers. First of all, we have our logo, Data Against Femicide, email alerts. And you can see the projects that fall under a typical organization. So we have Femicide Count Kenya as our organization, and the projects that fall under here are the Kenyan femicides and the Swahili Kenyan femicides. We also see a different organization, and here we have Swahili femicide cases. So you can add as many organizations and projects to your workflow as possible. You are also able to create a new project. So this is where you'll typically fill in this information. So the title of your project would go here, as well as the organization name. As this webinar is going through, you have the ability to add Swahili as your project language and select a region. So if we're working with Kenya, Kenya is supported. and the time zone that you fall under, as well as the time that you'd prefer to receive your articles. I personally choose 9 a.m., but you can adapt that to your workflow. You are also able to change your language. So here we have Swahili and the previously accommodated languages, Portuguese and Spanish. So let's go back to our homepage and go through the workflow of a typical project. So here we have Kenyan femicides in Swahili. And as you can see, we are receiving articles in Swahili that relate to cases of femicide. So a few important things to note is you are able to archive an article if needed. You are able to share these articles with someone within your team. Say you want to share something specific. This is where you would click and add an email and then click share. As mentioned earlier, you're able to adjust the range in which you receive your articles. So say you want to say, these articles are coming in from 13th to 14th, but we can have the articles coming from 1st. And as you can see, more articles come through from the database. And then you're also able to see the dates on which these were published and collected. And then to sort of help our workflow, you can flag if these articles are sort of relevant to what you want to collect or not. So you have the option to do so here. Finally, you can edit the settings, and this basically just allows you to edit the previous information. So you had created a new project title or a new organization name. These can all be edited here. But something that's really important is you can also add another member to your team, not just sharing an article, a singular article as previously shown, but adding a whole new member to your team and to your workflow. So this is where that would fall under. And you can also edit the terms that you use to receive your articles. So as you can see here, we have a search query that's entirely in Swahili, and that's what's allowing us to receive our articles. So that's basically a pretty simple overview of how email alerts works. But say, for example, you have found an article of interest and you'd love to work with it. This is where the data highlighter comes in, and I'll allow Sybille to go over that.
Thank you, Kirabo. So like Kirabo mentioned, the email alerts kind of fits into the workflow of an activist, as it enables it to link into the strategy of researching cases, so finding relevant cases for activists to be able to kind of filter and then facilitate that. Now further, the data highlighter is linked to the strategy of recording the data. So it enables you, now that you find an article of interest, to be able to extract the information that you need for data entry. So I'll be sharing my screen here. And you can let me know if you can see it.
Looks good.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to do a quick tour of the highlighter. First of all, we're going to start by assuming that you followed the instructions on the user guide and downloaded the highlighter extension from the Chrome Web Store. So here we can see the display for the highlighter there, available in the Web Store. The extension is compatible with Chromium browsers, such as Google Chrome, which we're seeing here, or the Brave browser, for instance. So there are some small restrictions there. So here we're looking at a sample article that we'll be highlighting for the rest of the demo. This is a story, a tragic story of a murder of a university student by one of her classmates, so Silvia Camunto. So here, if we want to highlight key information and record key information from this article, we'll find the extension at the top here in the extensions section. We can see that the data highlighter is the extension with the heart icon. So if we click on that, we will see a couple of tabs, and we're going to go through the functionality pretty much like tab by tab. So what's going on in the first tab, we can see that the UI, right, the user interface is already in Swahili. which is great. So there's a hint that much like the email alerts, you can customize the view to the language of your choice. In this case, Swahili is supported. So the first tab has a link to open a database that you've previously linked. We'll see an example of a linked database in the second tab. But here, this is the kind of main action here to be able to highlight. So you can toggle that on and off. If you toggle that on, then you can see that words are highlighted. Now we have default keyword highlights that are preset for us. So we have highlights for names, for places in blue, and for dates or timelines in yellow. And like was previously mentioned, we can add custom keywords and associate them here. So let's say, for example, in our use case, we wanted to focus on femicide cases that are in university settings or involve university or students. We could go ahead and paste in the name for student here and then update that. And then we can see that mwanafunzi, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, is the word for student, and that's been highlighted. So there is much that you can do there, and you can add a comma-separated list with more than one keyword, custom keyword. Now, next for the second tab is a tab of settings. So up here, you can see the language settings set to Swahili. There's Spanish, Portuguese, and all of that is automatically, the look and feel is automatically changed with the selected language. Next, we have settings for the database itself. So up here, there is a positioning of a spreadsheet that you link that can enable you to simultaneously view the article and be able to enter data that is relevant to you. So for instance, here I've gone ahead and linked a spreadsheet called Data Against Femicide demo, but the way that you would go ahead and add another spreadsheet is to enter the name for it here and then paste in the link. And then from there, you could go ahead and save that, and that would display on the list here. And this radio button that's selected means that it is the default spreadsheet that you would be able to spin up once you click Open Database. So if we're clicking this here, oh, it's not showing on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen that it actually popped up in. Okay, now that we're here, we can see that above, that the spreadsheet is showing above since that's the option we chose. And we're able to essentially easily travel between the information on the spreadsheet and on the article and be able to add that to the spreadsheet. So I've gone ahead and added those kind of keywords for the demo. But obviously, this is an easier way to, do this efficient data entry of the information from the articles. So now we're going to go back to the next tab. So I'm going to go ahead and share that again. Hopefully, you can see the screen. So we're moving to the third tab. So the third tab is essentially for contact management. So you're able to share the article with contacts of your choice. And this would perform an email share. So you can add a new contact here with the name and email. And for instance, here I had in my contact. So let's go ahead and switch this to Swahili so that we're back here. Okay. And finally, we would share the article using that share button. Now, lastly, the last tab is essentially showing the info tab. So it showcases all of the institutions, organizations, and individuals across countries who have made this tool what it is today. And it's a pretty impressive list. So this concludes the demo here. I'll stop sharing my screen. Yeah, Silvana, please feel free to share if you want the slides. Thank you very much.
There, yeah.
Speaking of the diverse international collaboration, the slide that we're looking at here is listing the tasks that were performed as part of the development of the Swahili tools. So the tasks are on the left, and the contributors to each task are highlighted on the right. So kicking off development with media sources curation and the recruitment of the project lead developer, it involved people from Femicide Count Kenya, both in Kenya and Australia, as well as team members from Data Against Feminicide, and in the US. Then, so these are the two top tasks. So once the project had a lead developer, the tasks of gathering and labeling stories to train the Swahili email alerts model, developing and deploying the models for email alerts in the highlighter became a collaboration between folks from Kenya, Uganda, and the US. So expanded again. Now, when it came time to do the crucial work of providing translations of the tools' user interfaces, the contributions came from translators from Kenya and from Tanzania. So as you can see, hopefully the table can kind of showcase that the larger development process for these tools fits right into the participatory and collaborative tradition of the Data Against Feminicide projects. Next slide, please. Not only did it fit into the tradition, it went a bit further and expanded the scope of participation and collaboration. So this time around, we were able to recruit a lead developer, and that is Kirabo, who did the amazing presentation earlier in demo of the email alerts platform for us. So the recruitment of a lead developer from the East African region pretty much served, right, to narrow the context gap between the developers of the model that are powering the Swahili tools and the users of those tools. Moreover, the process aimed at reflecting some core values that Audrey mentioned of Femicide Count Kenya, namely centering and promoting the knowledge and expertise of African women, so prioritizing that Afrocentric approach. And we did that by recruiting from experienced African female developers, and also the core value of fostering feminist leadership through targeted skills development and knowledge transfer. There, we made explicit throughout the interview process that the lead developer should dedicate some time for knowledge sharing with the technical team at Femicide Count Kenya. On the next slide, please, we'll see what kind of some lessons that we learned, right, throughout this this process and kind of this new endeavor of recruitment. So we did learn some important lessons. The first one, so to align with Femicide Count Kenya's mission and values, we learned that we learned to research and target candidates from women's tech networks in Africa. We learned to tailor our job postings and interview materials, right, to fit the core values. And we also had to think about what knowledge sharing would involve in practice, what that mentorship would involve. We also learned to coordinate syncs across time zone and establish reliable communication channels for development tasks that spanned 3 countries. So active collaboration between 3 countries. We had to kind of figure out the logistics of that. Next, while collecting stories to train our email alerts model, we also got a sense of the nature of Swahili media coverage of feminicides in Kenya. So unfortunately, we found that the coverage of the cases in Swahili came from a small set of web media outlets. So it kind of reflects what Audrey had mentioned about coverage of Swahili outlets. So we found that in the development process as well. So we had to make decisions about how to supplement the data, right, to get a better performing model, therefore a useful tool for email alerts. Finally, we were confronted with how underrepresented Swahili was in the natural language processing space. So the limited amount of Swahili datasets meant that African developers had to do more work in creating those datasets before making language models out of them. So our development greatly benefited from their efforts, but increasing performance for those tools generally requires significantly more work than would be needing for English or French tools alone. So for instance, we found that although there are up to 200 million Swahili speakers, a lot of the out-of-the-box natural language processing libraries did not include support for them, but they included support for languages like Basque, which have under 1 million speakers. So this imbalance there was pretty flagrant. So in summary, we just hope that the email alerts and data highlighter will be valuable tools in helping Femicide Count Kenya continue the crucial work of counting, naming, and putting human stories to women and girls whose lives have been ended through violence. Thank you. We're open for any questions.
Folks want to raise their hands. We can call on you and help you unmute your microphone.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Helena Suárez. I'm one of the co-leads of Data Against Feminicide. I feel like maybe you don't have questions yet because it's a lot of information that we've shared with you today. And we are so proud and happy to see the tools in Swahili. It's like the best 5-year celebration that we could have for the Data Against Feminicide project. So of course, I want to thank most of all Audrey, Sybille, Kirabo, and everybody else that has made the tools possible in Swahili and who have presented today these tools. But I want to also thank everybody who's here. I'm going to be giving a little bit of a close to the event, but if while I'm speaking, you think of a question for Audrey or for Kirabo or for Sybille who are here, feel free to interrupt or put it in the chat or in the Q&A. And of course, you can always continue to be in touch with us, through all the different channels that we've been sharing today. So I'm just going to reshare the presentation just to keep going for a little bit. But like I say, oh, thank you, Silvana. Most of you here, I know there's some old followers of the project, and I want to acknowledge you. You know who you are, the Paola Savias and other names, and Rahul, who are here and have been here since the beginning. But I wanted to also, because it's a big celebration for us. I know it's a serious subject, and it's full of sadness and anger, but it's also full of the joy of working together, of meeting each other, of finding ourselves across the oceans, across continents, and knowing that we can all share this hope for a world without feminicide. And on that note, we wanted to throw everything at this celebration. So the other thing that we want to announce is that after a long time coming, we have finally a version of the Data Against Feminicide Theory and Practice course open in English. So this is a course that we ran in 2022, and it was actually one of the first, let's say, requests that came from our first meeting of the community, what we call the community of practice of Data Against Feminicide. So when we had a meeting in 2020, one of the activities that we did is we asked the whole community to tell us what kind of things they would like to see for the community of practice. And one of the items that came out of that conversation was, I remember they called it a diploma on feminicide data. And, we're not yet at the level of a diploma, but we do have this course. We ran it in English in 2022, and we're running it again. We ran it in Spanish in 2022, and we're running it in English now. So you're all invited to come. You're all experts, but the course is a space to share with others. So it's a good space to have a debate with others who are working on the same strategies of using data to counter feminicide. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. It's just an invitation for joining this course. The links are put in the chat. Should we go to the next slide, Silvana? And so we made a bit of a mess of introducing ourselves today, because we had a very hectic meeting where everything was going wrong that could go wrong.
Guilty, I did. It was me.
No, so I'm just going to say this slide shows everybody that has been at some point involved in the project. The leadership team at the moment is myself, Catherine Ignacio over there, Silvana Fumega, who started the meeting, Isadora Cruxên, who started, and of course we have everybody else involved in the project here. And we're sure there's so many more people who have participated, and of course the most important people are not named there, are all the groups, individuals, organizations who work with data against feminicide. And let's go to the next slide. And we could never in a million years do everything we do without our wonderful interpreters. So Ana, Marise, Mariana, Patricia have been with us since the first event in 2020. Today we are joined by the wonderful Fiona Nasambu, and we just couldn't do these things of meetings across the world if we didn't have interpretation. So we heard Sybille was telling us about language and the importance of language, and this is something that we've always tried to contemplate. So we were very happy to be able to have Swahili interpretation for this event, and of course interpretation to Spanish and Portuguese were our kind of working languages along with English. So thank you. And I'm going to say it, even though I will say it really badly, asante kwa. And lastly, thank you to everybody. These are our details. Remember the directory, we put it up at the beginning. This is a space where if you can, we're going to keep it open for 24 hours for editing. So if you want to add your details there, it's a PowerPoint. It's a very long PowerPoint that has a list of an amazing number of people who are working on feminicide data. We usually open it during our events for people to add themselves, and then we close it so that no hackers can hack it. So, go and join there. You can always contact us by email on datoscontrafeminicidio@gmail.com. Visit our new website. We have a newly designed website. I feel like this is a very long close, but that's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And who knows, maybe it will be 5 more years.
Thank you.
And the last thing is probably we're going to meet again in November. So we are going to keep you and everybody updated about the news. So this is kind of an unusual meeting. We're going to have our regular meetings in November. More news to come. So follow us.
Here's my plus. It's hard when we have the webinar format. We can't see everybody, but yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just make noise for everybody. Thank
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Thank you everyone for joining. Muito obrigada. Gracias. Asante in Swahili?
Asante.